Hello everyone and welcome back to Aetherfall, where I talk about my dream for an RPG video game. In today's episode, we'll be discussing combat and stealth mechanics within the game. These mechanics are crucial for the core gameplay loop of most action RPGs, and so need to be looked at and researched to effectively implement. However, in this video, I won't be diving too deep into specifics about these mechanics such as numbers or anything like that, more so looking at important features needed for their success. So, without further ado, let's get started. My idea for combat and stealth take heavy inspirations from both recent Elder Scrolls and Fallout games. However, as usual, there are a few differences that make Aetherfall's system its own. The first change would be to combat, specifically with combat AI in the moments prior to an actual battle. The change is an expanded upon aggressiveness factor for AI personalities. A big pet peeve of mine is how most enemies simply attack the player instantly. There are no options beyond fight or flight. Fallout 4 barely scratched the surface with their perks Animal Friend, Wasteland Whisperer, and Intimidation. In Aetherfall, most potential enemies will not immediately attack the player. Animals will defend their territory when they're young, and will quickly become aggressive if trespassing between them and their babies. Predators in the game will also have these factors, as well as a new hunger factor, which can be anywhere from satiated to starving. A satiated predator, that is not having its territory actively trespassed, might simply ignore the player, while a starving one would hunt the player down from great distances. You can stop an aggressive predator by offering food, adding a new wrinkle to dealing with them. Feeding an animal enough times may make it and its pack friendly to the player, even leading to companionship. On a case-by-case basis, some species will have their own quirks that can be worked around, such as bears being afraid of fire, or orcs and ogres being unable to swim. Knowing a species' strengths and weaknesses can provide the player with advantages to win a fight. On top of this, goblins, orcs, ogres, and ungwai are some of the rare enemies that will almost immediately turn hostile at the sight, sound, or smell of the player. Anomalies will attack the player based on your internal magic level, becoming more aggressive the more magically charged you are. This aggressiveness factor extends to humans as well. While a few bandit groups and others might attack on sight, most will at least be able to start a dialogue with. Bandits, mercenaries, and some townfolk are quick to defend themselves if you point a weapon at them. Some might ask you to put your weapon away, and some won't care. Investing in charisma or bargaining perks, as well as construction perks, will help resolve conflicts peacefully when on the island. Moving on to another combat mechanic would be the introduction of aquatic combat. The ability to fight in water, especially in a game on an island with an underwater city, is critical. This type of combat would make some weapons obsolete, including heavier melee weapons, projectile weapons, and certain magic. Besides Aether, Dark, Electricity, and Light spells, all other weapons and magic receive debuffs in the water, making the player using these debuffed attacks much less effective at combat, and making enemies such as Drakks and Nomanians very dangerous. With perks, weaponry, and armor suited for aquatic warfare, the player can become better equipped at fighting in the water. Now, we move on to stealth, the intro or alternative to combat. I think stealth works well in Fallout 4, albeit overpowered with proper perks. However, there needs to be a bit more nuance when sneaking around. For example, say you're sneaking around town stealing from everyone. Reasonably, people should become suspicious by this action, making it harder to lockpick or pickpocket. You can earn a reputation throughout town based on your petty crime habits or lack thereof. If a player entering a town coincides with many goods being stolen, NPCs may assume that you are behind the theft. This can lead to higher prices, NPCs being meaner or untrusting towards you, and even being exiled from the town. Pickpocketing is also no longer done by simply crouching behind an NPC. Instead, you can do it standing up and requires the NPC to be reasonably distracted. NPCs will have a distraction meter that is measured by noise level, if they're in a conversation, and the level of physical stimuli they're experiencing, i.e. doing an activity like smithing or getting bumped into by another NPC or a player. Stealing owned items will also fall under the pickpocketing category, even if it's not on the person. Stealth also is not as simple as being seen or unseen in player noise level. Things like brushing past foliage, wading in water, and footprints in sand, mud, or snow affect sneaking. Expanding upon this, specific surfaces the player walks on make different levels of noises, with sand and dirt making little or zero noise, creaking floorboards, snow, and crunchy leaves all making an alarming amount of noise. Once tipped off to a sneaking player, enemies will have different levels of searching. At high levels of disturbance, such as when a player kills an enemy and their allies find the body, the enemies will make defensive fortifications, group up, and go on patrols. This behavior won't change for quite some time, making it more imperative that the player remains hidden and hides bodies. After several hours, the body or bodies will be buried and the area will return to normal. No more must have been the wind moments. Stealth also needs to bring back the ability to dress like a particular faction in order to sneak past enemies by hiding in plain sight. Disguises should be commonplace in the game, and affected by two different variables. The first is the player's deceit level, the skill which affects the ability to lie, both with words and body. The second variable is your reputation. A player with a high reputation, either good or bad, with a faction will be unable to disguise themselves unless their face is covered. Finally, there are some combinations of stealth and combat mechanics. First, there are non-lethal takedowns. These provide a role-playing opportunity for players who wish to not kill, say a Batman or a Monk playthrough. They give much less negative karma than killing, and have their own perk trees associated with their progress. Secondly, some enemies, such as praying mantises, snakes, and human assassins, will have a unique attack mode called stalking. This means they won't actively rush the player, but instead wait until out of sight to sneak behind attempting an attack, making as little noise as possible. By raising your own sneak skill, you'll be better at perceiving when an enemy is sneaking up on you, including sensing louder footsteps and marking the sneaking enemies with small visual cues. That'll do it for today's episode. If you enjoyed, then make sure to give it a like as well as comment what game had your favorite combat and or stealth system. This has been Brian, and I hope to see you all for next time. Bye for now.